Thank you very much for coming. We're going to start with a new work by László Krasznahorkai, which Timothy Don is going to read in translation.
Someone's knocking at my door. I've been living in complete silence for months, I might say for years, with just the usual dull sounds you hear at the outskirts of town, the occasional echo of steps in the corridor, and further off in the stairwell, someone dragging a sack, a carpet, a package, or a corpse, God knows what, along the ground. Or the sound of the lift as it slows, stops, opens, then closes, and starts to rise or descend. Every so often a dog barks briefly, someone laughs or shouts, but everything dies away, soon lost in the constant, low-level murmur of the street outside. That is what complete silence is like around here. There are, of course, times I put on the Zelenka Mass or listen to one of Schiff's Wohltemperiertes Klavier interpretations, or take out Spoon, Karen Dalton, or Vic Chestnut. But after a few bars, I turn it off, so it may be quiet again, because I want to be ready and I don't want anything disturbing going on when he arrives and finds me. To be honest, I wouldn't have been surprised if he hadn't knocked, but beat at the door, or simply kicked the door in. But now that I hear the knocking, it's clear there is no difference between his knocking and beating or kicking the door in. I mean really no difference. The point being that I am dead certain it is him. Who else? He of whom I know and have always known that he would come. The most tragic figure in history is the one in whom two terrible conditions meet. The two conditions that meet and combine in him are bottomless idiocy and unbounded aggression. Someone once said, he was a self-exiled Hungarian writer in San Diego, that this kind of person inevitably crawls from the gutter during one of those historical lulls. I don't agree. There is never a sufficiently long lull in history. If he did ever live in one of those filthy historical sewer systems, he has been at liberty for many a long year now, for decades, ready to raise flags, discover kindred spirits, move about in groups, and organize secret meetings. He is rarely alone, but is always to be found in one of those indeterminate military uniforms, his ideas nonsensical or non-existent, since these are simply obligatory forms of hatred, hatred being his raison d'etre, his guiding principle, a hatred whose object is usually only hinted at, though hatred never lacks an object being very much the point, and I should know, since I am that object. Say I am sitting in a bar and he steps in. I can immediately see that he has immediately singled me out. My eyes are light blue. I am thin and don't stand straight. That's all. I have no idea how this tells him, makes him so certain that I am the one, but there's no denying he has an instinct for picking us out, picking out the weak. I say weak because that, I suspect, is what irritates him in me. So he stands beside me, and everyone near us feels the tension, and both he and I know what must follow. But it doesn't, in fact, matter where I am, whether I'm at a railway station where he picks me out in the waiting room, or in a shop I happen to be shopping in. Our eyes will lock, and then it's too late. Too late for me, that is, to look away, because I always know what is coming, and am simply incapable of making an escape. I know it would be in vain. Should he find the words to articulate his hatred, he would say he is defending himself, that he feels threatened, by me as it happens, though I wouldn't hurt a fly. He goes to the gym, does martial arts, and trains day and night, so that after a while his body is, as they say, pure muscle, nothing spare, his skin merely an ornament to his physique. No superfluous hair, eyes, nose, or ears. They're all superfluous, needing nothing but this pure muscle, because he had better be prepared, as the others tell him. I mean the pack he goes to gym with, to shoot with, and to train with. Prepared because the enemy is all but invisible. The enemy can be named and is everywhere, but as soon as you put your hand out to grab him, that at least is his own experience, the enemy slips through those pure muscle fingers, wriggles free, slips away, and pretty soon disappears, so there's nothing left in the pure muscle fist, and he has to start all over again, searching, fencing him in, and pounding him with his fist again and again. When asked to give his name, he prefers to remain silent, because even if he has a name as such, he doesn't really have one because he has no need of one. He is entirely subsumed in his function, his hatred. The hatred, that should be his proper name. That is, if he has to have a name, though what he loves best is having no name. Anonymity being his natural condition, his desire to become of sufficient weight to kill, to deliver a fatal blow, a single terminal blow that has accurately located its object. Well, It's the weak who invite violence that are the problem. And this kind of weakness has nothing, absolutely nothing to do with the condition that determines his nameless, unlocatable, extratemporal being. That produces him, discards him, and will continue to produce him as long as the world exists. Because his own weakness, and let's not call it weakness, let's call it sensitivity. In other words, his sensitivity is the result of the infinite exploitation that constitutes his sense of being, that is his being. No one has said of his kind, and therefore neither has he, that anyone personally desires to be nameless, placeless, and timeless, nor has he or his kind ever desired such a thing. Nor that he should spend the whole day at the gym. Not for a moment did he want it, nor did he have any desire, as his understanding matured, to become a muscle-bound colossus kept alive on a diet of sheer hate. Whoever cared about such things? And now he should be citing the ancient Greeks to explain why he is really like he is, why he is what he is, why he feels so strongly about the weak. Why precisely about the weak? Since no one gave a toss about them, really no one at all. They shit on them in the past and are shitting on them now, and that's how it will go on. Although, if we are talking about the weak, it's a no-brainer to point out that the fundamental aspect of his universally undesired, unnamed, rootless, forced into the shadows being is his own weakness, or more precisely, his sensitivity. Because it is not the weak that are weak, it is him. And he is quite willing to carve this fact out with his jackknife and pour lead into anyone's ear about it, because the true situation is that throughout all of history, he is the only one who is the real loser every time. Not those irritating snail fuckers he is absolutely justified in hating. Since he, who knows more about real weakness than anyone else, is brave enough to say this to anyone at any time, because he may be a mass of terrible muscle, he may be a giant, an ultra, a super, and a champ, at the sight of whom all those irritating pretenders to weakness shit themselves. But he is the truly weak and truly sensitive, the true outcast, the one doomed to remain so throughout history. And he will confess that there are times he almost cracks when left alone in filthy lodgings where he remembers, because so it has tended to happen recently, that he couldn't properly follow the way of the sun and lies there unable to sleep, and he finds himself thinking of it, of his own weakness, his own sensitivity, his own vulnerability, and the thought that he should do something about all this, that he should, in other words, sweep away those who would supplant him and cheat him of his role, meaning those filthy little maggots who use weakness as a mask. Sweep away those whining pretenders to weakness, those parasites, and settle with them for once and for all, which means he has to track them down, search them out again, but do it properly this time, with a clear agenda, in full view, to discover where they are hiding, so that the truly weak and the truly sensitive might finally emerge into the sunlight, find their rightful place, and earn a name that fits them, to track down and discover behind which filthy dark door, on which filthy dark floor of which shabby tenement block they are cowering, looking to exploit someone who will not be exploited, him, that is, since tracking down and discovering is child's play for him. So he'll draw himself up to his full height, set out and find them, just like that, within seconds. He stands in front of number 6 and sees himself as he says to himself, I had to do something. I must defend myself. I simply have to get to him because I won't give up without a fight. I set out to find him. I searched for him and found him. I tracked down the block where he was lying in wait. I saw the entrance. I have climbed the stairs to his floor. I know which apartment it is. This one, and this is his door, number 6. I raise my hand. I could beat at the door, but for him, it's enough that I knock.
Timothy, Don, Timothy, thank you very much. And Timothy will come back at the very end to read another original new short text by László Krasznahorkai. László, I don't know, are there two sides of the brain, this side and the left side and the right side? And in one side, I don't know which side, you store information, images. Someone tells you something, memories. And then what happens if you're writing is that those things, something, becomes rhythm, moves into sound, or moves into something you can work with, moves into a sentence. And what I want to ask you at the beginning is if you could give us an idea, because of how your sentences work, or how they begin, if you think in sentences, and as you're working, how you compose a sentence.
You know, I hear always sentences. Maybe not with this or that side of my brain, but a little bit in the downstairs. There are actually one huge sentences. I hear like in a huge space, I hear only one sentences. Everybody speaks and everything speaks. And this is a big chaos of speeches, you know, and I try to find a line in this big, huge chaos and pick up one very small part of this sentence and follow these sentences. I don't know where can I find the rhythm of the sentence, but this huge sentence is what there has a big tempo and speed and rhythm too, and I can say really absolute often that I cannot choose a style, or I cannot choose some way how can I depict something, but I try to hear this huge chaotic, in this huge chaotic space, this chaotic sentence, and somehow to follow that, and if I catch it somewhere, there is a point. After that, I try to follow this one, and everything is ready. Not only in the literary world, but in the existence, I think so. Everything and everybody is there. I didn't need, and I don't need to make sentence or sentences. It's enough to hear this kind of line, you know. And the characters in my books they exist. This is not a product of my brain or my wish or something like that, you know.
I notice in this book, table there below, which is by a new translator, that I'm hearing still a sound in the sentences that is yours, that it isn't. It hasn't changed because of the new translator coming. That it fundamentally belongs to you as a sort of DNA of style. And I wonder just one more thing, or maybe two more things about it. Hold on. You begin a sentence, and you have a sound for it. Now, at what point do you know the sentence has to end, for example? I mean, you keep adding to it. You have a rhythm for it. You interrupt yourself in the middle of the sentence to say something else, but the rhythm remains under the sentence. You're holding the rhythm, almost as though you're a singer or a drummer, or you're involved somehow or other in making music. Does that make any sense to you?
This is a difficult question, because this is a book which was written not by me, you know. This book, the English table there below, was written by Ottilie Mulzet. She is the translator, but actually every word in this book, every word, there are some. Every word was written by Ottilie, not by me.
Yes.
And this is
George says in
yes.
the other books it was George, who's a poet.
Yeah.
And you expect that if a poet translates a prose writer, you will get a poet's style. But what I'm noticing is that I'm getting your style in both translations. It's coming through, almost like water coming through.
It would be very, very interesting, maybe also for me or for a few people, what is the distance now between these two English language, between Ottilie Seyobo there below and George, the other translator of my first books in English. There are some difficulties. I felt it, but what the language which I use, this is really very close to the music. I think so. I make also music at home, and not for people or. But I live always. I play piano, a lot of instruments I use. Yeah.
What do you play?
Piano, guitar, cello, or what does it mean?
Cello, yeah, cello.
And I don't know if I am in Japan or China. I listen to music and I love it very much. Next day I go to a shop, an instrument shop, and I buy this instrument and I try to somehow. For example, when I wrote the War and War, an old novel in English, I was in Crete. Crete. For a few months, and that was very interesting. That was Eastern, like here, for a few weeks or 1 week, and that was a little bit different. This Eastern in Crete, in Crete, that's a little bit different, and the music was also very different. Here, this Eastern was a big experience for me to go somewhere north on the Broadway in a church, a family church. The gospel was absolutely fantastic. And in the old time in Crete, that was two old men in a village next to my village when I worked, where I worked, and they played at so fantastic old music, and that was so unbelievable, strict and disciplined and beautiful, with an instrument which name is lira. Yeah, so big, only like a violin, and so. And this is absolutely fantastic. And of course, next day I tried to find, but it was not so easy to find it. And so I collect different instruments, and I play for a while. And after that, it's enough. And the next music and the next instruments come.
Sometimes with a sentence, you're like a child with a toy, and it's Christmas, and there's another toy has arrived.
Yeah.
That you simply won't let go a sentence, that there's a sense of, once you start, your mind begins to move and glitter.
Maybe not my brain.
Your voice?
Your
voice.
Not my voice.
Right?
Not my voice, yeah. I told you very often that I hear speeches around me, and I follow this. And this is not only
you hear voices.
Symbolized. Yeah. For example, here too. So many different, not only people.
Yes, but
speeches.
Yes, but László, the voice that you use to make the sentences is also very controlled and exact.
Because
I mean, it isn't just a voice you hear and it appears on the page.
But after
phrase by phrase by phrase,
but after, if I catch a sentence, and I follow it, And if I tell me, okay, that's it, this is the sentence. After that, when I write down, after that, of course, I control that, and I make corrections and so on. Yeah, of course. But this is a work after.
Does it? I mean, music is one thing. Perhaps also the circus, and the sense of a tightrope, of you walking along a tightrope with a sentence, where if it doesn't work, it's a disaster because you will fall. Do you find sometimes that you need a certain moment to work? You know, that inspiration becomes really important, or that sometimes it doesn't happen for you? Months or days where these sentences don't lift.
Yeah, there are some very decision moment. Yeah, and this whole catching process belongs to this moment. Actually, every important thing.
Every what?
Every important thing
Yeah.
happens in that moment for me, and I can build sentences or something different also from this moment. I go back and back again and again to this moment, and I try to understand somehow. This is not so easy to understand the moment, you know. And this is actually the lock. Where can I catch this craziness of the sentences and speeches in the universe?
You say, and I think anyone who knows your work will understand how important music is. I wonder how important travel has been for you, moving.
Yeah, absolutely. This whole story started with the fact that almost until my 30, I couldn't make travel. That was a negative space of traveling, you know. That was also a kind of travel, because that was in my mind, that was in my desire. That I sat in a very small town. I sat in a very small country, and there in a very small town, and there in a very small house, and there is a very small room, and so on and so on. You are boring, and there I dreamed about, what could be there, for example, in America, in New York, or something like that. And until almost my 30, it was absolutely impossible for me. And that was even so important in my life. Then after 89, 87 was the first year when I could make
So
a
where did you go?
treatment.
So where did you go first?
First to West Berlin. That was 87. And West Berlin, of course, that was one of the most interesting and fascinating city for me, especially because the city was absolutely full with people with wands everywhere. Wand? Wand?
Oh, people with wounds.
Okay, wounds.
Okay, yeah, okay.
Okay. Sorry.
That's
Sorry.
okay.
And that was actually the democracy of the wounded people.
Wounded people, yeah.
Yeah, and it was unbelievable for me because I felt there among the people as a kind of people like at home, first in my life. That was my first. And after that, 1990, because of an accidental fact, I went to the Far East. And that was a beginning. On a way down there, Asian.
And New York?
New York was a little later. And the reason was Allen Ginsberg, who was a friend of mine. So many people could say that, and I am very happy that I can say also that. Although I met
So
Ellen
let's start if you could just
Yes.
explain. Where did you meet Ginsberg?
Pardon? When?
Where? Where? and
Where?
when?
In New
Where,
York.
where and when?
In New York.
Right.
In New York. In
And-
New York
and
because
how,
we had
then?
we had a common friend, and
Okay.
I came to New York because I wanted to check some scenes for their new novel, for my War and War.
So
And-
just stop. I want to stop you for a second.
Okay.
So you're already writing your New York book, War and War, before.
No. That was in a process.
Yeah, but
That
you were
was in a process.
imagining it.
Yes. I imagined some scenes, in New York,
Yeah.
but I needed to check
Yeah.
what does it like, and it is possible to go from this point left or right.
Yeah. Okay.
And I had to be here because I couldn't imagine me, And so I could live in Ellen's flat, not too far from here actually. And Ellen was one of my helper for this novel because I had some problem because the main character of this novel is a very colorful, extreme figure, and that's why I needed a very neutral, monochrome background. But New York was every other than monochrome and neutral, and that was very difficult problem to solve that in a literary way. And Ellen could help with a very, very wise advices.
And when was the first time that you went to China?
That was 1990.
Right. And could you
And
describe?
how?
Could you describe that to me? Just arriving in China, and the effect of China, had on you.
On a wonderful Saturday afternoon, the sun shined. My two children played in a street where I lived in Hungary. Out of the blue, the phone rang, and so on. And somebody called me. Somebody called me that, sorry, I have to manage something very, very, very briefly, and that's why, in medias res, could you have some mood to come with me in 1 week to Ulaanbaatar because of a Genghis Khan conference?
A Genghis Khan
Of
conference,
course,
right?
I answered.
Yes.
Of course, why not?
Yes.
After such a question,
Yes.
people cannot say no.
No. Yeah. Okay.
And in 1 week I was in Ulaanbaatar, but not at a Genghis Khan conference. There was a Genghis Khan conference in Ulaanbaatar, 1990, but Ulaanbaatar was so unbelievable, really. That was my first meeting with absolutely different world. I couldn't imagine actually that such a different world can exist than Mongolia or Mongolai, I don't know.
Mongolia. Yeah.
Mongolia,
Yeah.
but like Mongolia, and I in the daylight, I walked in the city. That was not a normal city, and that was absolute shocked. I saw the things there, and I couldn't try to understand it because that was ununderstandable. Really, that was so wide, so far from my world, and I was there. I've been there so without reason, and so fast, and I couldn't check it. And I sat with my friend, acquaintance, in a so-called hotel room in Ulaanbaatar. What a hotel was it? Jesus Maria. And I show my friend the map that, this is the word. there is somewhere Budapest. This is Ulaanbaatar, and this is Peking. Could you imagine that we can go again to this area? No. In this case, we have a chance now, only now, and just only one chance we have to go now to Peking, and that was the reason that we got a train ticket to Peking, and suddenly we were Peking, and suddenly we were, or I was in, I've been in Peking. That was also a fantastic experience.
Did you feel underneath the society?
1990.
1990.
Not today.
Did you feel underneath the society a sense of an old religion, of an old culture, that the, for example, the modern buildings or the communist regime was merely a veneer, a front, something strange that had been sort of just a screen, but that it was very easy to pull the screen back and find the other thing?
What more, I was absolutely blind for these new facades, Maoist and red carpets. I couldn't see that. I saw only this old one, the old city. But that was very strange.
Could you go into more detail about that? Because I think it's a difficult idea. Because when you're there now, in China, that is really what is given to you. That is the constant, is what has been created in the society over the last, say, 40 years. But it's very difficult sometimes to find anything beneath that has endured, if you're an outsider.
Yeah. The essence was for me, actually, not to find this old China, but to understand how does it possible that I found there an absolute permanent, a constantly historical time. I came from Europe, and in Europe we have an absolute cutted historical time, or a feeling about the history. Everything was collapsed, and after that, from the zero, came something, a new start, a new beginning. But in China, that was a little bit different, because when I was there, people had this feeling that the history is a constantly process, and that was unbelievably interesting.
And Japan?
Oh, Japan was the strangest. Of course, for everybody, is the strangest country. This is a magical country, really, and I don't know why. I've been there a relative lot of times, because I went back and I went back again to understand why I can't understand Japan, and I went back to understand it, but without success.
I think for a lot of us here, Hungary is also a sort of mystery.
Hungary?
Yeah, I'm sorry to tell you this. Hungary is a sort of mystery. You know, that, first of all, the language is so difficult, so strange, and so unlike the other languages around it. Secondly, the way in which, despite communism, certain things survived. Houses with books, people who trained their children to play music, a whole haute bourgeois world that for 45 years stayed indoors, but emerged very clearly in the 1990s as having really just stayed indoors, as though it was raining or something for 45 years. And their grandchildren or their children could emerge in the 90s. What's your background in Hungary? I mean, what sort of world do you come from?
I told you that I'm coming from a very far small town, from the southeast part of Hungary. But this is not enough to say about this town. To live there in this small town meant that you are so far from Budapest. And where is Budapest? So far. And we dreamed about first, not about New York, but about Budapest. Yeah? That somewhere more, maybe we can, we have a chance to go to Budapest and to see Budapest, the big city. And so and this small town was really absolute far from the world. And that was a town with a bourgeois culture. The communist theory was not too successful in this small town. That was poor communist people who believe really in this strange theory suffered there because that was the people tried to understand what is the communism, but they had an experience only about the Soviet occupation and not about the communist theory, and so everything was very ridiculous for the people. What communistic was. We children, we suffered of this absolute big, deep craziness, the idiot speeches of the director of the school or something like that. Everything was like in a circus, for us. And to live in this small city meant also that you were a little bit defense, because a little bit closer or much closer to Budapest, it could be not possible to live there. What means actually bourgeois town? The Hungarian culture had and has maybe also today a very close contact to the Austrian German culture, especially to the German culture. And the Hungarian culture can thank very much for the German culture. And that was very, it belonged to the daily situation or things that an old man went to the bed to sleep, and before he slept, he read Goethe or Schiller in German. That was general in this small town, and the children had to learn music, for example. And every Sunday afternoon, the children had to play for the guests. That's why I hate, for example, Mozart, because I hate.
Poor Mozart.
Yes, poor Mozart. Yes, I agree. But
so
every Sunday afternoon, could you imagine you?
It's really difficult for us to find, to trace what your work comes from, what tradition you would place it in, what reading really mattered, that nourished you, that gave you a sense of, I could do that, or I could do better than that. I could try some names. I could just throw some names at you just to see what will happen. If I said Dostoevsky to you, what would you say? Dostoevsky? Dostoevsky?
Aye.
But when? I mean, were you reading him when you were a teenager?
Yes. The time when I was 10 or 11 or 12, that was a border in the history of the communist Hungary, because approximately that was a time when started to publish, was possible to publish the so-called Western literature. First, of course, the classical, and later the contemporary classical, Faulkner, from Faulkner until I don't know, Miller or something.
Give me Faulkner then.
Faulkner.
When did you read Faulkner first?
Yes, I was a big fan for Faulkner. Absolutely. Until today, actually. Only that was a big luck for us that even of the communist party or the cultural life in the communist Hungary, the best poets, best Hungarian poets and best Hungarian writers couldn't publish their own works, but they had a chance to translate. And that's why we had a fantastic translated literature. And we suffered now, for example, after 1990s, because every great writers and poets couldn't translate.
Yeah, they didn't want to.
Yes.
They'd done enough of that. They wanted to publish their own work. Kafka?
Absolutely. Without Kafka, I couldn't exist. For example, I was 13 years.
No, I just want to stop you for a second. This is a remote place in Hungary, which is mainly agriculture, with you know, but with really good library, really good bookshops, really good.
In the family libraries.
Okay.
In the family libraries.
Private libraries.
Private libraries.
Okay.
Yes, and this town were absolutely full with private libraries.
Right. So that the communists didn't burn books.
No. Libraries were very. The public libraries were, for example, very popular because you could get the Classica, for example, there,
Right.
in translations. In translation, but the contemporary books you couldn't find there.
Right.
Only in the private family
Okay.
library.
Okay, I've mentioned Kafka, I've mentioned Dostoevsky, I've mentioned we've mentioned Faulkner. Anybody else that would come as a you know, as a
For example, the old Greek poetry that was played a very big role in my youth, because I came from such a family where which was what does it mean? For the children of this kind of family were not possible to learn Western languages, live languages, French, English, German. It's only Old Greek and Latin.
Okay.
That was my punishment there, but later I was very happy, very glad. And that's why we could, when I was 14 years old or later, until 18 years old, I read a lot of Greek authors. I enjoyed it, not only the contemporary literature, but also the old. But I can tell you Dante, because in the gymnasium, in the so-called college, Hungarian.
You mean in high school?
Yeah. We had a fantastic teacher who had only one patient, and the patient was Dante, and that's why we loved very much Dante, of course, and so on. You know, this town was a little bit full with some foggy people, you know, like a big camp of some wounded people, yeah, of the communism, yeah. And we had learned a lot of things of these people, not only Dante, but also from the daily life. Some legendary figure walked back and forth on the street, and we saw him, and we tried to find who is he, and that it belonged also to the culture.
And cinema?
That was a luck time, because that was a time when I was 14, 15, 16 years old. That was a time when we could watch movies by Fellini, Antonioni, Tarkovsky, Bresson, and that was maybe the greatest time for the movie at all. and we enjoyed that. And we could see in a normal cinema, not at home.
Is it possible that some of the roots of your work arise from censorship, arise from the idea that if you were playful, if you were indirect, if you dealt with language as a form of music, that you could publish? Whereas if you wrote down the local conditions of the agricultural workers, they would stop you. Is that possible?
Mm. That was possible, yeah. I don't know, and until today I don't know, why was it possible to publish my first book, Satan Tango? Because that was 1985. And 1985, there were no one who believed that in 4 years everything is over.
Yeah, the future didn't exist, as it were.
And I don't know why. Maybe because this publishing house in Budapest had a director, and he was in the 50s, the most difficult time in the Hungarian communists. That was the pure terror. And he was secret police, a main person of the secret police.
Oh, that's very helpful.
Later,
yeah.
And later,
no, because he knew the system, he understood how.
Yeah. And later he became a director of one of the two literary publisher houses, and maybe he tried to show for somebody, I don't know who are this somebody, that he has power to publish such a book. Satan Tango is not a typical social realist book.
No, but it's also, it's not optimistic. If I was a communist with Satan Tango, I'd say stop that. That book is dangerous.
Yeah.
Because it's filled with dark imagery. It's filled with pessimism.
Yeah. But I've never met him, this director. Never met him.
So what happened?
Peter Esterházy, a writer of us from my generation, brought the manuscript to the publisher house, Magvető. That was the name, Magvető.
And where were you living, and how were you living? I mean, what were you using instead of money, for example?
I had a job. I had a lot of small jobs after each other because and that was a very simple workers, not always agricultural workers, but sometimes because that was a provocation. Also against my family, And,
all right. You mean going to work in the fields?
Yes.
Was a way of killing your father?
Yeah, that was the time. Yeah.
Okay. And you wrote this novel.
Yes.
At night.
Time.
At night, it's filled with night, isn't it?
Night.
Night.
Every time. I sat in a bar, or worse than a bar.
Oh, okay.
And I wrote in my head this novel, and if I had some possibility, a chance to find a space at night, I wrote down the text. When I was ready, I don't know, some pages.
And you knew Peter Esterházy?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
How?
I published the text in a literary magazine.
Okay.
That was a small text. And after that, I've got from Peter a card. You are a genius. Hugs, Peter. So.
Yeah. And you sent him the book?
No. After that.
After, okay.
Only after that.
Okay.
First, I needed to hear that you had a genius.
Can we bring up the lights and maybe we'll take some questions from the audience? Can we do that?
Yeah.
Great. So we can take some Anybody? Yeah, great. I just can't see everybody, so shout. Oh, there are microphones. Can you go to the microphone? Great, thank you. And if somebody wants to come to this one here, just there, great. Okay.
Okay, my question goes as follows. The process for the writing is that you're hearing the voices and trying to bring them into control and make some corrections and such. And then we have a wonderful reading of your work. And we're hearing a voice again. And I'm wondering, as you're hearing that voice, whether it resembles the voices that you heard. And as you're hearing this beautiful voice that we heard today, and that wonderful reading, whether you want to, in a sense, control that reading and make corrections even to your own corrected work.
Thank you very much for your question, because it's not enough to praise this reading only once. Thank you once more, dear Timothy. Of course, I hear the text in English, and I remember what I was written, and there is a similarity. There is a similarity, but this is the English. The essence of the English language is different than my language. Maybe only for my ears, I don't know. Maybe because I cannot speak English, as you hear, but maybe not. And I try to remind my sentences, and I try to follow if Timothy read. How does it sound in my language, what I wrote? And that was, of course, not only similarity,
Okay.
also these differences.
And we've got a question over here.
Yes.
Hi.
Hi.
I was just wondering if you could speak more about how the Asian arts and thought inform your writing. You could just speak more about that.
Pardon?
But Asian thought and arts about
Yeah.
Asia.
Oh, I can speak maybe too much about this.
Thank you very much.
That was a big challenge for me to be there and not to enjoy the Asian culture. Asian culture means for me only the Chinese, Japanese culture. I've been never any other countries in Asia. That was even enough. Especially in China, I try to dig a little bit deeper in the old Japanese culture, and especially the architecture, the Shinto architecture, and the Buddhist sculptures, and some painters of the Japanese Middle Age, or the Shinto music, or the Buddhist gardens, or the kyudo, the Japanese archery, and they all influenced me very, very deeply. But until a border, I could enjoy it. But after that, I had a strong desire to understand it, and this is a big mistake in Japan.
Okay. Yes, please.
I noticed in the reading that the more that you seem to kind of like reach your writer's compassion out, the more violence you seem to find, like the carpet becomes a corpse, or when you shift perspectives and kind of find some compassion for this thug, you're finding violence there, even though you're also finding a sort of twisted sensitivity in him. I was wondering if you could talk a little bit about that.
I didn't hear you, sorry.
Oh, excuse me. I'll try again. So I noticed the more that you reach out into the world, try to understand the world around you in this writer's voice. The carpet itself, dragging through the hallway, becomes a corpse. when you shift perspectives into this thug who's knocking at the door, we find a compassion for him and understand him, but what we're finding when we look into that is violence. It feels a little uncanny to me, and I was wondering if you could talk a little bit about how those two came connected for you, and if they are connected.
Is that okay?
Yes,
Yeah.
it's clear.
Thank you.
That was a question of an English magazine, an English newspaper, pardon. Guardian, something to write, or no, the New York Times, pardon. The New York Times asked me to write something about the present Hungary. And of course, they wanted to get some political analysis, or which was not possible in my case. I could write only this text about the Hungarian daily life, because this violence unfortunately belongs also for the daily life in Hungary. Especially now, we suffered very much in Hungary of this kind of violence, and I cannot do against this process only if I write some such a thing that's this someone knocking at my door, because every such a figure knocks actually at my door, you know.
Okay, thank you. Charles?
Sorry. The difference between novels and other forms of art, like a piece of theater or a painting, is that you can take the painting and everything at one time, or in 2 hours you get everything. But with the novel, usually we have days or weeks to read them. But with your sentences and your pages and your paragraphs that go on for pages, it's difficult to stop reading. Or if you do stop, when you start again, you have to start in the middle of a sentence, possibly.
Yeah.
So do you have any, is that in the kind of the act of the reader reading? Does that enter into your mind about how your works are experienced, or how you experience your works that are like theater or other kinds of art? Or
No. I deal only with literature, and after a while, let me say, in the last 40 years, I dealt only with words. I have only words, you know, and this is all. This is my treasure.
But I think the question is,
yes.
Could you guide us? As Charles is asking,
Yeah.
if you stop at a certain point, sometimes with you, it's very hard to say, I'll read more next week, or I'll read more tomorrow, because you feel you have to go back to the beginning again, and because you're held in a sort of hypnosis.
Yeah, this is also difficult for me to make an end, because I know that this is not the end. Yeah. I can repeat only what I told you all a little bit earlier, that I hear an absolute infinite sentence, and I try to follow that, and I know when I put a period after a long or much longer sentence, is a huge sentence. This is a the artificial thing.
Okay. Thank you.
Hi. I'm still interested in how you would characterize the sound of your Hungarian language with the sound of the English language.
It's difficult, because to answer this question, I would need a knowledge about the English language, and I can say only anything or something about the Hungarian language. This is a very this is a very fragile language, and you have some extreme fine chance to depict a process, and you you haven't an obligation to say in concreto about something, about the things. You can a little bit remain dim. And I have some idea about the English language. I have some idea about the Spanish and French and German language and Italian and Greek and all. And every language not allowed this dimmy situation in a sentence. For example, in French language, a very short example, there is a part of a text by me where a woman wanted to correct something in a telegram at a post office, and she goes back to the postman, and she asks him that please allow me to correct only one word, and this word is in English, one word in Hungarian, hiába. In vain. This is two words in English. In vain. But in the French language, doesn't allow to use without a context. What is in vain? What is in vain? You know, the Hungarian language allow that much more.
So could you give us the English word again?
In vain.
Oh, in vain.
In vain.
Oh, right. Okay.
If somebody impossible or
in vain.
You do
in
something
vain.
and
Okay.
in vain. Mm-hmm. And this fragility, I don't know, is it right word, fragility? This fragile nature of the Hungarian language, I love very much.
Okay, can we take that question?
So I have a quick quote I wanted to give you that was recently given in another lecture in the English-speaking world by a poet Geoffrey Hill. He said, the idea that you write to express yourself to me seems revolting. The idea that you write to make glorious or to glorify the art of expressiveness to me seems spot on. In the English-speaking world, we sort of take it as a democratic ideal that if we choose to express ourselves, that's something we should champion. Is that an odd or sort of peculiar activity that you notice in the West? And how does that contrast to the idea of writing for you being a Hungarian?
Difficult question. I shouldn't solve something in my literature or in the literature, I think so. I shouldn't create. I have to choose only from my words any, and from these words I can find this line of the big space of crazy speeches, a line for you, which is suddenly not, very personal for you, and if it is successful, that's the great, really.
Okay, we're going to end with the reading. To ask Timothy back up on the stage to finish. Sorry.
Could you possibly read the page in Hungarian?
Sorry, we can't. He hasn't got anything in Hungarian. I'm sorry. But Timothy, could you do that for us, please? Next time we'll.
Maybe a line in Hungarian.
Yeah. Okay, great. A line in Hungarian.
I translate back. Én itt hagynék mindent. A völgyeket, a dombokat, az ösvényeket, és a madarak hangját a kertben. Én itt hagynám az összes utat, a mennyet és a földet, a tavaszt és az őszt.
I don't need anything from here. I would leave everything here. The valleys, the hills, the paths, and the jaybirds from the gardens. I would leave here the peacocks and the padres. Heaven and earth, spring and fall. I would leave here the exit routes, the evenings in the kitchen, the last amorous gaze, and all of the city-bound directions that make you shudder. I would leave here the thick twilight falling upon the land, gravity, hope, enchantment, and tranquility. I would leave here those beloved and those close to me, everything that touched me, everything that shocked me, fascinated, and uplifted me. I would leave here the noble, the benevolent, the pleasant, and the demonically beautiful. I would leave here the budding sprout, every birth and existence. I would leave here incantation, enigma, distances, inexhaustibility, and the intoxication of eternity. For here I would leave this earth and these stars, because I would leave everything here. The valleys, the hills, the paths, and the jaybirds from the gardens. I would leave here the petcocks and the padres, heaven and earth, spring and fall. I would leave here the exit routes, the evenings in the kitchen, the last amorous gaze, and all of the city-bound directions that make you shudder. I would leave here the thick twilight falling upon the land, gravity, hope, enchantment, and tranquility. I would leave here those beloved and those close to me, everything that touched me, everything that shocked me, fascinated and uplifted me. I would leave here the noble, the benevolent, the pleasant, and the demonically beautiful. I would leave here the budding sprout, every birth in existence. I would leave here incantation, enigma, distances, inexhaustibility, and the intoxication of eternity. For here I would leave this earth and these stars, because I would take nothing with me from here, because I've looked into what's coming and I don't need anything from here.